And welcome back, everybody. A lot of wise words from Lee. I think he's an exceptional person, a player as well as commentator. That is a joy to be able to actually interact and get involved with, during VGC as a whole. I think a granddad of the community is what we called him the other day. But I think he's an exceptional role model for anybody looking to be interested into getting into the competitive scene.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, looking back at that video, having played VGC for 1 or 2 years myself, it's really nice seeing all of those events that Lee's taken a part of over the years and been able to interact with so many players across his time in VGC, and of course having such good tournament performances way back in the day, 2009 through 2012 and 2013, when Lee was doing very, very well in the competitive scene, and of course 14 when he managed to get to the World Championships top cut in that season, and of course on and on and on. It's just he's got so many achievements to his name.
He does, and I mean, he's a great guy as well. I think being able to see his sort of transition from a player into also, the promotion of the content creation for Pokemon and the competitive scene, going into the commentating side as well, has been a joy to see, and has been, honestly great to have him on board and be a sort of a leading role model, as I mentioned before, for everybody looking to sort of get more involved.
Yeah, exactly. And that's whether you're playing VGC or just having fun at home. I mean, Pokemon's one of those games. We're here talking about the competitive aspect of it, but of course, there's so much to do in the region of Paldea and so many things to explore. And Lee's work bridges the gap between both.
Yeah, exactly that. And I mean, what a game to do it with as well. I think this game has been one of the best. I think I've heard a lot of positive feedback in sort of the direction that things have been going. The new Pokemon as well. I mean, the sort of effect that they've had on VGC, I think, has been incredible. Who would have thought they would have brought in 2 Pokemon that are completely immune to status type moves, or at least some part of them, which are going to do incredibly well. Like, I don't know, let's say Golden Go and Garganacl.
Garganacl is actually, one of those Pokemon that I'm really excited to be featuring on stream. But we've yet to see one. And do you know what? I was really surprised, actually. Playing online in the in-game ladder, the popularity spiked quite a lot coming out of San Diego, but it hasn't really shown its face there. And I'm not sure whether that's like a little bit of a preference of the US community, a little bit more than the European community, but maybe we'll see it coming up.
It might be. Maybe we're sort of foresight, getting that involved there. But I think Garganacl as a whole is a great Pokemon. Golden Go, though. I think being able to see the Golden Go and how well it performs, being able to add on the Steel type of the Terra just adds so much more damage. And the fact that, for example, we saw there, Marco in the previous game was able to get a lot of damage dealt onto it. It has some good coverage options. Thunderbolt, I think, of course, it does have Power Gem. So it just depends on what part of your team is maybe lacking or a bit weaker to, I don't know, for example, Volcaronas, or in this case, Rain-type teams.
Yeah, and you know what? If all else fails, just Steel Terra.
Yeah.
Make it rain. And, it's probably going to do enough damage. And we saw that in the previous stream game with Miguel and Marco, where that Make It Rain from Marco's side of the field just did so much damage. It was aided a little bit by a critical hit, but, not too far off what you'd expect regardless.
No, exactly. I think it's a Pokemon which is very potent, especially in its presence, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon, if I'm completely honest. But of course, we did see the sort of resurgence of Rain teams. I think Amoonguss is so strong, and I think a lot of people are sort of so used to it that they've gotten complacent of its presence, because it's just such a good Pokemon. And I think having the Terra type, let's say, for example, flexibility, I think we've seen a lot of Dark type Terras, maybe to sort of counteract and add immunities versus Psy-Spam sort of strategies. But it's really good against pranks, the Pokemon that may have Taunt as well.
Well, exactly. Pokemon like Murkrow that really want to, use those pranks to taunts against it, it can definitely block. But the Dark-type Terror, I think, is also really quite effective against some of those Trick Room teams. Early in the format, we saw lots of Torkoal with Indeedee and Armor Rouge and using that sort of sun strategy to boost up the damage and really make sure that you were getting into Trick Room and hitting really, really hard. But the Torkoal seems to have sort of tapered off a little bit, and we're left with this Indeedee Armor Rouge as a composition that tends to be a little bit more popular than the combination of all three at the very least. And that Dark-type Terror is really good because Armor Rouge's expanding force is something to be afraid of.
Yeah, exactly. But, of course, we will have our next match coming up. We're still going to be featuring two trainers, which are 3-0. Fahad Quaraishi versus Miguel Latorre. UK versus Spain matchup coming up. And I think it's going to be quite fascinating to see what those two trainers are going to be able to bring to our stream.
Yeah, exactly. And two players that we've not been able to feature as yet. It's really exciting, especially in these sort of tournaments. These players have already done well. They're 3-0 now.
Yep.
So it's great to be able to bring some new faces to the table as we see the team of Fahad on your screen there.
Yep.
Dragapult, Farafarig, Hariyama, Kilowattrol, Torkoal, and Meowscarada.
Yeah, really cool team there. We've, I mean, coincidentally talked a bit about those Sun Trick Room teams, and we actually do see one coming up on the fray. Farigiraf is those Pokemon that really has a very good position if, of course, wanting to be utilized both as a Trick Room user as well as a imprisoned Trick Room user. I think being able to have that Armor Tail as an ability to completely negate all priority type moves going into it, such as, let's say, a Fake Out, is very powerful.
It is, and on Miguel's side of the field, and we've got a little bit more of a solid composition, not really going for too many set strategies. We have the Annihilate there, but not paired up with the Mouse Hold that we would be used to. So, you know, that Annihilate doesn't have access to beat up that it would normally like to boost up those Rage Fists. But equally, it does have some redirection in that Amoonguss that we were just talking about. And this Amoonguss looks really good. Both of these players opting for Clear Smog to be able to take away all of the boosts from Pokemon like Dondozo, which is a really important tech that both players have. Not going to be as relevant in this matchup, but really nice to see that sort of thought process in their team building.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a Pokemon that we have yet to see on stream, Ben, is that Skeledirge. And I was quite missing it, if I'm completely honest, even if it was a bit unaware of that fact.
It will be unaware right up until it gets knocked out, I believe. But yeah, Skeledirge, really cool Pokemon. And another Pokemon, actually, that tends to be used oddly as a fire type to be able to go up against Dondozo because of that ability. And of course, with Terra as a mechanic, it can just change its type. Typically something like a Fairy Terra type or, you know, potentially a Steel type. But it looks like this one is a normal type Terra.
Ooh, normal type, not what you commonly see, but it kind of makes sense defensively as it wants to remove, or at least should I say, add an immunity to any sort of super effective ghost type moves going into that slot. But Ben, we've got game one underway, we've got the leads, and we are, of course, going to be seeing the Hariyama and Farigiraf versus the Annihilate and that Grimmsnarl.
Yeah, and Grimmsnarl's in a place that it really doesn't want to be at the moment. Farigiraf has an ability, Armor Tail, which stops all priority moves from coming off. And other than the screens that the Grimmsnarl has access to, which are going to be pretty useful unless it gets stopped by Fake Out, it's not going to be able to do anything on the offensive this turn.
No, it's definitely not, as we are going to be seeing a bulk up coming out from that Annihilate right now, just wanting to sort of take advantage of this passive play coming out from Fahad here. Setting up the Trick Room with Farigiraf. Of course, it makes sense. You are going to be able to go ahead and actually get the speed advantage going for yourself, but Annihilate actually going ahead and starting to buff itself out is quite nice here because it's going to be able to resist any sort of additional physical damage coming out from that Hariyama, which most notably, it does not have that Flame Orb that we commonly actually do witness it have, that instead has that Assault Vest. It's really good to sort of position yourself in this way and maybe out-extend these turns of Trick Room.
Indeed, as Reflect coming out from the Grimmsnarl there, making sure those physical attacks don't do nearly as much damage as Hariyama knocks off the safety goggles from that Annihilate. Dazzling Gleam as a follow-up from Farafarig is doing a nice little chunk of damage there to both the Grimmsnarl and the Annihilate. but that bulk up is really going to start adding up. 2 bulk ups in a row, Costa.
Yeah, I mean, that is quite tough, and it kind of makes a lot of sense. You've got the Grimmsnarl going for the Reflect there, just adding to its physical defensive prowess, in this case, at least mitigating the damage as much as possible. I would expect this Grimmsnarl to try to go ahead and actually set up a light screen as well, which would make a lot of sense. You just want to be able to passive play against Trick Room as much as possible, as we do indeed see that light screen.
Indeed. Hariyama, though, breaking both of those screens with a brick break. So Miguel not making the most use of the Grimmsnarl in this turn, or these couple of turns, as it does get knocked out by that Dazzling Gleam. For Rafarig does have enough gas in the tank, so to speak, to do so. Drain Punch, though, coming out onto that Hariyama. And Hariyama, a Pokemon with lots of health. It's going to be restoring absolutely tons of health to that Annihilate.
It really will, and it quite nicely does so. I think being able to have Annihilate have that sort of consistency of getting the setup of the damage. You've got a massive amount of damage output. All you need to do is just sort of recover the HP and take any sort of attacks that you need to, so they could go ahead and power up your Rage Fist, as I believe this Annihilate then actually is of the Safety Goggles variant.
Yeah, we saw that knocked off in turn 1, and you know, a really good sort of pick going against a Trick Room team, although no Amoonguss on Fahad's side of the field to kind of take advantage of that, only the Torkoal moving very, very slowly. It would be really nice, I think, for Miguel to have maintained those screens, but unfortunately not, and Dazzling Gleam is definitely something he's going to be watching out for now.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense, I think, kind of forcing Miguel's hand potentially go for the Terror type, as you do want to avoid taking as much damage as possible, as of course we did get the confirmation. Annihilate has gone for that Fire Terror type, so it will be resisting the Fairy type attack coming out from this Farigiraf, if of course it goes for it. But in the meantime, Salamence is going to be going for a Protect, as we do actually get Dazzling Gleam coming out, going to be dealing very minimal damage onto this now Fire type Annihilate, which means that it's going to be allowed to get a Drain Punch off, and wow, what a good amount of damage to pretty much fill it nearly all the way up to its maximum HP.
Yeah, right the way from down quite low as well.
Yeah.
And it's really showing how good Annihilate is in this format. Getting the couple of bulk ups, stopping that physical damage. Farigiraf, in fact, is one of those Pokemon that doesn't really do too much damage unless you train it to be very offensive. But we're seeing, you know, the choice there from Miguel for going for that Drain Punch rather than going for something like a close combat there. Less damage initially, but you can see the longevity that maintains, and it's really likely that Miguel's going to get all the way for a Trick Room.
Yeah, as we're actually going to be seeing a switch out right here of the Salamence for that Skeledirge. It is in a really good position to sort of resist any sort of attacks going into it, as we are going to be seeing a Protein Sucker Punch coming out right now. The typing has changed to Mono Dark on that Meowscarada, but deals absolutely minimal damage. And with that Dazzling Gleam not being able to do the exact same thing due to the Fire type, Skeledirge coming in, very, very sort of a slow turn, or at least not as profitable of a turn from Fahad's side. Also, on the other hand, Miguel is just going really well under this Trick Room mode, not being threatened at all in this situation.
No, you see the effect of the Fire-type Terror coming out from Annihilate as well, because you know, Fahad bringing in the Meowscarada, maybe it's got an ability to get more than one attack off, and you'd want that attack, especially after 2 bulk ups, to be something like Flower Trick, because it always lands a critical hit. It'll ignore those defense boosts that the bulk up affords the Annihilate. But no, it's Fire type. Annihilate's going to resist it.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think now that Trick Room is over, we do have Fake Out available from the Hariyama, but of course it will only be able to target down that Annihilate due to Skeledirge's dual typing of Fire and Ghost. So Meowscarada going into this turn, I'm not sure what it can actually do to this Annihilate. Hariyama may want to be going for a Fake Out there to at least slow down the momentum, but remember then, that will further boost Rage Fist.
Well, I don't think Rage Fist is actually the move that Fahad is really worried about here. I mean, we've seen how much damage that Drain Punch has done and how much sustain that creates on Miguel's side of the field. As Salamence does swap in now onto the field, gets that Intimidate off on Hariyama, and yeah, I mean, it's going to take a flower trick pretty well too.
It really will, as we're actually going to be seeing the Annihilate not wanting to fall susceptible to a fake out and maybe a double up, but no fake outs here. We are going to be seeing the Meowscarada hoping to go for that pivot play, targeting down the Annihilate in order to get any sort of minimal damage that it can, in combination with Hariyama's Rock Slide, which will be hitting Salamence super effectively, but due to that Intimidate, it's not going to be dealing quite that much of damage.
Yeah, but I really like that Rock Slide here from Fahad. I mean, like, there's only one more turn of Trick Room left, and so, you know, you've got to make as much use of it as possible, and especially using moves that do spread damage, but also are now super effective against both Pokemon on Miguel's side of the field.
Exactly, as we are going to be seeing U-turn coming out right now. The pivot will allow Fahad to bring in their final Pokemon, which is actually that Torkoal then. That would have been really handy under Trick Room.
It certainly would have done.
Yeah, as we are going to be seeing the dual wind beat going into the Salamence, from the Salamence into the Hariyama slot there. Does pick up a KO, but of course, even if the Torkoal is now on the field, it is very tough to deal with Annihilate, as it is, of course, the fire type. And actually, Miguel has gone for the read, or at least wanted to deal a lot of damage and has successfully done so, picking up a one-hit KO.
Yeah, that Rage Fist was pretty strong.
Yes,
definitely. That's really as much as we can say about that one. We know that it'll knock down a Torkoal in one hit. Torkoal's a Pokemon known for its physical bulk there. So, yeah, Meowscarada versus the world. It is carrying a Focus Sash, so, you know, would normally be able to take one hit from the Salamence. Certainly will be able to from the Annihilate, but we did see Dual Wing Beat coming out from the Salamence, and that is going to bypass the Focus Sash. So a last-minute Terror on Fahad's side, going for that Terror Grass on Meowscarada, just launching that last flower trick onto Miguel's side of the field.
Yeah, hoping to deal as much damage as they can, although, of course, to avoid and bypass any sort of bulk up stat stages there to the defense. But, of course, I don't think that's going to matter at this point. Fahad, unfortunately, their Meowscarada is going to be going down to the dual wind beat, which does connect 2 times in a row. And it was quite tough because I think the fact that Miguel made such an exceptionally good play, going for the Rage Fist, sort of makes sense, because if you think about it, what is Meowscarada realistically doing to the Annihilate? You're not that threatened, so just going for the Rage Fist with the boost that you've been able to accumulate, with the amount of times Rage Fist base power has increased with the amount of hits it's received, it is always the safe play. And if for whatever reason Fahad feels like they have their backs against the wall, they will try to go for that instant switch to sort of try to change the board state. But unfortunately, Miguel was able to be a step ahead of that and was able to sort of pick up that KO and not leave Fahad any sort of way back.
No, it was a really uphill battle for Fahad. I thought like they did really, really well in the early game, being able to break those screens that the Grimmsnarl had, getting off good damage with the Farigiraf on with Dazzling Gleam onto really everything that was Grimmsnarl and the Annihilate. But the Annihilate having those bulk up boosts and having the time afforded to it to do so, and then being able to recover all of its health with Drain Punch, just really removed basically every option that Fahad had.
Yeah, exactly that. And going into game 2, though, however, we've got to try to think, let's say from Fahad's point of view, if you're Fahad right now, how are you wanting to sort of go into this game? You saw the Annihilate was such a huge threat to your strategy that you weren't able to essentially break through it, because the Fire Terror type is quite nice going into that Torkoal mode with a Trick Room. And Hariyama, normally we do see it have Flame Orb, so it's able to deal additional amounts of damage output. However, in combination, of course, with its ability. But however, in this case, it was Assault Fest, so it's not able to deal as much damage as it would have liked.
No, not at all. I think, you know, it's a little bit of a gamble, right? But I wouldn't mind seeing the Kilowattrel coming out for Fahad's side of the field to try and put some early game pressure onto that Annihilate. I think really that's going to be the key to the game. Can Fahad do enough damage to the Annihilate in the early game to stop those bulk up setups? Because, you know, if you take Annihilate out of the equation, actually Farigiraf and all of the other Pokemon on Fahad's side of the field are able to do quite a lot of work.
Yeah, but we're going to be seeing a switch up right here as we've got the Hariyama and Kilowattrel coming out actually over on Fahad's side versus the Annihilate and Grimmsnarl once again from Miguel.
Yeah, I really like this. It's kind of pressuring the early terror coming out from Annihilate potentially, because you don't want to get air slashed. We've got the fake out there, of course, from the Hariyama, topically going into the Grimmsnarl right there.
And it does get a critical hit, adds to its damage tally. But Kilowattrel actually going for the Tailwind here, maybe wanting to see if that Hariyama can actually outspeed in Tailwind. But no, we've got the Wind Power Kilowattrel, which will be adding additional boosts to itself. Whilst talking about boost, Ben, we got that Annihilate going for Bulk Up yet again.
We have indeed, and really brave play there, I think, going for the Bulk Up in front of the Kilowattrel, but nice setting up the Tailwind there. It's one of those things where instead of like moves like Charge, where the boost to your electric moves, they go away after a turn, when you get Wind Power set up, you can actually keep it for a little while. So I really like that play.
Yeah, as we are going to be seeing that Annihilate now go for the Fire Terror type. Whilst, of course, Grimmsnarl getting a light screen up here does mean it will be adding to its special defensive bulk, which, of course, means this Air Slash is not going to deal that much damage at all. Even though the Brick Break does come out from the Hariyama, it does get rid of both of the light screen. But in this situation, Annihilate is just becoming a threat yet again. It's quite tough to deal with this, and I don't know if Fahad has a very solid answer to it.
No, not anymore. I mean, it would have been a nice idea to bring the Kilowattrel just to be able to do damage to that, but clearly we weren't on the right side of that particular prediction, because it's just so bulky, and the light screen can just keep getting set up and set up and set up and stopping that Annihilate from taking too much damage.
Oh, but to be fair, that was a very good amount of damage. Brick Break, however, is going to be picking up the KO, does once again get rid of the light screen for the second turn in a row. And I think in this scenario does actually allow Annihilate to go for the Rage Fist here. Doesn't want to boost up yet again, because Rage Fist, of course, is more than enough. You have the +1 of its attack, as well as the 2 times it was hit with the Rage Fist, bringing it straight up to 150 base power. And of course, Kilowattrel, not notably known to be the bulkiest of Pokemon.
No, of course not. Obviously, with the open team sheets, these trainers know where the items are, and we know that Focus Sash is on the Meowscarada on Fahad's side of the field. So now a little bit of a switch up coming in. Salamence hitting the field, going to be getting that Intimidate onto Hariyama, making sure that that Annihilate is even more safe. But for Farigiraf, coming out onto the field does mean that a Trick Room is a potential option here for Fahad. And if that Torkoal is in the back, even Eruption might be able to, do a little bit of damage, even resisted to that Annihilate, because that light screen got taken out by the Brick Break last turn.
Yeah, it's interesting because Fahad's got 2 methods of speed control. The Tailwind is still up on their side of the field, whilst Trick Room is an option. Rock Slide, however, comes out and actually does deal good damage. But however, we've got the Salamence going for the dual Wind Beat here. Does pick up the KO on that Hariyama, which is very, very nice for Miguel's side of the field. Of course, Life Orb, but recoil damage being dealt there, and Annihilate dealing so much damage, of course, whilst recovering HP. This is quite pivotal, I think, what the Farigiraf does go for, and it is that Trick Room. Even though Tailwind, I believe, was still set up prior to this and has been perfectly timed in order to go ahead and get the Trick Room set up whilst it does peter up.
Yeah, timing is definitely key in VGC, and that's the reason for it, especially if you've got 2 different forms of speed control at your disposal. And now Torkoal coming in, this Annihilate is only at half health, and I kind of expect it to nearly pick up the KO, if not pick up the KO on this Annihilate, the Torkoal that is, with the Eruption, and certainly with a follow-up from Farigiraf.
Yeah, I think being able to Terra type at the moment will be really, really valuable for Fahad to try to get back into the driving seat of this game to kind of force a Game 3 if possible. So being able to Terra type, we said, Eruption is very, very powerful. You've got the Farigiraf, which does have the capability of going for Psychic, Dazzling Gleam, and Grass Knot. So a lot of coverage there, but it makes a lot of sense to try to go for spread damage as much as possible. However, Annihilate could be a really good target for Psychic, but there's the Torkoal. Torkoal's getting ready.
This is the game for Terra Fire, ladies and gentlemen. And following up is that Eruption. We'll see how much damage this does to both Pokemon. Oh my god, is that a knockout on the Salamence?
Oh, wow, that is a critical hit. But then again, you know, damage resistances no longer become resistances. They kind of nullify at some point when Torkoal's amount of damage output boosted by the Charcoal, by the Sun, by the Terra type, and the fact that it's 150 base power spread move is just insanely powerful. And once again, it's just proving dividends. I think Torkoal definitely getting fired up.
Fired up indeed. And yeah, I mean, I'm fired up to be potentially going for a game 3 here, because that Skeledirge is going to be able to do a fair amount of damage. We'll have to see how this interacts, because you know, Skeledirge is able to resist the Eruption, but it's not going to have to, because it's the Torkoal does have access to the Earth Power, and a Psychic follow-up does so much damage.
It really does. Torch Sun does actually pick up the KO, because of course we are in the Sun, and Skeledirge does get a +1 to its special attack at the moment, but it's going to be quite tough, as we do still have a couple of turns remaining of Trick Room, so being able to get some leftovers recovery is great over on Miguel's side, but I think they may have to go ahead and try to lean in on the Protect plays here to get additional recovery.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if the leftovers recovery was enough to be able to take it all of the way out of damage range for the Earth Power or the Eruption or anything else that Torkoal would want to do at this stage. And you know, maybe with a couple of Protects in a row, we're running out of Trick Room turns very fast, and with that special attack boost, the Skeledirge may have been able to knock out the Torkoal, but not this time. Fahad taking the game and taking game 2, and for us, we're going to a game 3.
Game 3 indeed. I think in that situation, if I was Miguel personally, I think you still need to wager on the double Protect there. Yes, there is a chance based on the damage that was dealt from the Earth Power the previous turn to survive it, but it's still not as much in your advantage, because you know, like, obviously these trainers, they've gone through very rigorous training with their teams, going into the calculation expectations and stuff like that. But in that scenario, if you do get a double Protect, you are not only outside of Trick Room, you are first. You are leading first. You have the chance of surviving a subsequent Earth Power, and you are at +1 torch due to the Torch Sun in special attack. Maybe you'll be able to go ahead and actually deal enough damage with the Shadow Ball, 2 Shadow Balls in a row, to maybe pick up the KO if you can on Torkoal, maybe lean a bit on the critical hit, but there were definitely still odds and chances.
There definitely were. And actually, quite interestingly, I was just doing a little bit of maths behind the desks here. I believe the Eruption single target would have actually been more powerful than the Earth Power with that Terra type, even though the Earth Power was super effective against that Skeledirge.
I mean, it's definitely a factor to add in due to the single target situation, right? Eruption being a spread damage move makes sense, you know. You're not going to have all of the damage being accumulated onto both of the targets, but when it's a single target, you get the full wrath of that base power.
Yeah, exactly that. We're going into game 3 now, and same leads coming out as game 2. Hariyama and Kilowattrel, and Annihilate and Grimmsnarl.
Yeah, and I think what we did see in the previous game was the Kilowattrel actually go for the setup of the Tailwind. Does allow for the wind power being in effect, but we're going to be seeing Fake Out once again into Grimmsnarl. Makes a lot of sense. So Tailwind following suit immediately after, once again. The exact same situation, and I have a feeling that we're going to be seeing a bulk up.
How did you call it, Costa?
How would I have known?
It's not like we've seen this exact turn before.
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
No, but like, you know, this is a great turn 1 for both players, right? You know, you get your bulk up set up if you're Miguel, you get the Tailwind and that boost from wind power set up if you're Fahad, and you just sort of start bringing the board state into your favor. We saw it work for Fahad last game, so I'm interested to see where the variations are in this game 3.
Yeah, as we are going to be seeing Annihilate once again terrestrialize into the fire type right now, removing its weakness to flying type moves. So very similar situation as to the previous game, as we're going to be seeing Rock Slide actually coming out right now and picking up a flinch on the Annihilate. However, the Spirit Break will be coming out from this Grimmsnarl into the Kilowattrel, and due to the Covert Cloak item on the Kilowattrel does not drop its special attack, and we do know that it is not a competitive Kilowattrel too.
Yeah, that's a really nice interaction there, actually. I didn't quite catch the Covert Cloak effect on the Spirit Break there, but I was thinking, hey, if this Kilowattrel was competitive, that wouldn't be a good look there coming into the Kilowattrel with a Spirit Break. But yeah, as it stands, just a really nice adaptation there for Fahad, I think. Just everything to do more damage to that Annihilate.
Yeah, as it is going to be going for Protect. It does not want to be the target of any sort of damage moves right now. We do see Light Screen being set up. This may be followed by a Brick Break once again from the Hariyama into that slot, which we did see pays a lot of dividends, and we are going to confirm that it does occur once more, because Hariyama's in a situation where it could essentially nullify Grimmsnarl's move in consecutive turns in a row, right? And being able to pick up a flinch on the Annihilate there was so crucial, and it makes a lot of sense because Hariyama, notably, is generally a slower sort of Pokemon. Being powered by Tailwind does give it that chance for a Rock Slide flinch.
It does indeed, and yeah, both moves, Air Slash and Rock Slide going into the Annihilate, compound the chances of a flinch happening. Grimmsnarl getting the Light Screen up, but being knocked out this time. But the Light Screen is actually in effect this time. Both Rock Slide and Air Slash going into that Annihilate, but not causing the flinch. It is going to be a Rage Fist, knocking out the Kilowattrel, and I believe on the turn that the Tailwind is going to be ending.
Exactly that. Annihilate is still standing with 16 hit points, and it does have quite a few boosts when it comes to its Rage Fist base power being increased. And Farigiraf coming in a very well-timed fashion, of course, capable of setting up Trick Room. However, there's a Salamence over on Miguel's side, so maybe there to try to deal as much immediate damage as possible, as we do know that it does have that Life Orb item.
It does, and with the dual wing beat, we saw it in the last game, going to be able to knock out that Hariyama quite easily unless it goes for its terrestrialization. But we saw how that actually was a benefit for Fahad in the last game. We see the dual wing beat knocking out the Hariyama in one yet again.
Yeah, and I think that Life Orb just proving why it's such a great item on Salamence in combination with the dual wind beat. You could get rid of any sort of focus sash Pokemon such as a Moongus if they're trained correctly. But we're going to be seeing the Drain Punch deal half of that Farigiraf's HP there, in, of course, allowing the HP to be passed over, let's say, to Annihilate, whilst the Trick Room is set up. But I feel like we've seen this story before.
We have, and it will depend on what Pokemon in the back. If it's still that Skeledirge on Miguel's side of the field, I feel like Miguel's in a little bit of trouble here. I mean, back in the previous game, the Salamence was probably able to survive the Terra Fire Eruption from the Torkoal. Unfortunately, it was a critical hit, but now Farigiraf has the opportunity to go for the Dazzling Gleam to follow that up, and Annihilate and Salamence are really in a pretty precarious situation.
Yeah, it really is, and I think being able, like you very well said there, the fact that you've got double spread capability and Salamence can't terrestrialize into another type means that it feels a bit trapped right now. I think, of course, it can go for Protect. It has the option to try to stall out an additional turn of Trick Room, but all of the damage pressure is coming out from Fahad's side. Having the sort of synergy of both speed control choices and text from each side of the spectrum is really nice. You've got the full positive increase of speed control with Tailwind, and now you've got the Trick Room, and it's so nice to actually see this within a game.
It is, as we see the terrestrialization coming out from that Torkoal, the Annihilate going for its Protect, making sure it's not doing any, or taking any damage, should I say, and an Eruption follow-up from the Torkoal. Looks like that critical hit was pretty influential in the last game, as Salamence hangs on with a good amount of HP there, and following up, oh my god, with the Dazzling Gleam, but not picking up the KO there. To be fair though, I feel like both Salamence and Annihilate are sitting pretty close to KO range right now.
Yeah, they most definitely are, and I think Miguel has most definitely trained their Salamence quite nicely there to be a bit more bulky, even though they do have that Life Orb as an offensive item. But in this situation, Miguel does have 3 Pokemon remaining and a Rotom switching in, which is going to be taking this Eruption quite nicely, and being able to have 3 versus 1 means that you could sort of try to waste out the remaining turns of Trick Room whilst having some good Pokemon to switch in to resist that fire type.
Yeah, and that's what you want, is a lot of Pokemon to resist these big attacks coming out of your Torkoal in the Trick Room. Like this Eruption, doing less than half damage to that Rotom. That's going to afford Rotom another opportunity this turn to be able to launch back a Thunderbolt if it wants to, or even go for a Hydro Pump, although, yeah, less reliable because of its accuracy and less damaging in the sun.
And I think something that we actually forgot to call out is the fact that Light Screen was still in effect, which means that is why the Salamence was able to take that so nicely there, which proves to be so crucial into the strategy of Miguel going up against Fahad here, because Miguel wouldn't have had that additional Pokemon to be able to sort of switch in and switch out versus this Torkoal, and Torkoal would have just been able to click the Eruption button multiple times in a row.
Exactly, and that Grimmsnarl is also carrying the Light Clay, which means that that Light Screen is going to be in effect certainly to the end of this game, or to the conclusion of what we're seeing here. And Annihilate coming in, getting the Protect. We're just wasting out a little bit more Trick Room. A Rotom, hopefully, on for Miguel, will be able to survive this Eruption if there's no critical hits or anything else going on. That's exactly what we see. Gonna munch on its Citrus Berry, go back to a decent amount of health. And one thing that is in effect now that we've talked about a little bit, but haven't actually seen in play yet, is that Rage Fist being set up. The Annihilate switched out, you know, it's had a little bit of a rest.
Yeah.
It's coming back in. It's still mad.
It really is very mad. Outrageous, as we are going to be seeing the Thunderbolt actually pick up the KO on Torkoal, which does mean Miguel Latorre is going to be the victor of this round. And in what fashion, indeed. I really honestly felt that Fahad was going to be taking this all the way, but the fact that the Light Screen was still up and the Hariyama went down to the dual Wind Beat of the Salamence meant that it wasn't able to get a Brick Break off, which led to the conclusion of the Salamence still surviving and not leaving 2 Pokemon locked in versus the tremendous power of this Torkoal under Trick Room.
And that was a big difference in Game 2 compared to Game 3, because you look at Game 2, I look at Game 1, it looked really clear. It looked like Miguel had the matchup and really had all of the tools at their disposal to be able to win the match. There was a little bit of a switch up in Game 2 for Fahad managing to, you know, keep that Light Screen, as you mentioned, off of the field. And then Game 3, we saw how impactful it was, and what a way to round off a set.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the fact that we saw the prioritization of Fahad in Game 2 to still be consistently brick breaking, right? And the fact that you were able to keep that consistency up meant that you were always going to not have to contest against any reflects or light screens that will throw out any damage calculations that you've currently got going into the matchup, which honestly did pay off. It really proved to be critical there.
Yeah, exactly that. We're going to be going to a short break now, but we will be back very soon with our winner from the previous round, Miguel.
And welcome back, everybody. We have your winner of round 4, Miguel, joining us, of course, to talk a bit about how that match went. It was a very fiery match, to say the least, Miguel.
Yes, it is. It was really difficult because, well, I have been practicing the Faro Giraffe and Hariyama matchup in those days ago.
Yes.
But that was really tricky, you know, as you have seen with the Rock Slide and the Air Slash. I was like,
there was so much flinch potential coming out from the opponent.
I know my Nihilab is so bulky, so he can resist a lot of damage, and later he can punch with Rage Fist.
Yes.
And so I was really hoping not to flinch to to make the best in game 2 and game 3.
Exactly.
Well, later in game 2, I carried Skelardis that has not a really good matchup against Torkoal.
Yep.
So in game 3, I changed by Rotom, and I think that's that gave me the game.
Yeah, because it was really good to have the Rotom to sort of have as a switch in potential, right? It's going to resist, it has the Citrus Berry, so if you go within that range, then it's just going to be able to recover and take an additional hit as well.
Yes, because it's not only for the resistance of the damage, it's just because I have to play with the Protect to make the Trigger Room off, so then I can Rage Fist with my Annihilate when the Trigger Room ends.
I mean, it makes sense, and that Annihilate, my lord, it put in so much work. It was the big threat as well, and I think your opponent did really well, Fahad, in recognizing that they need to try to counter it and sort of focus down on it. That's why they brought the different speed controls. We saw Tailwind, and that in combination, like you said, with Air Slash, Rock Slide, so much flinch potential, and we did actually see that flinch come out, I think, was it in game 2?
Yeah.
Yes, it was game 2. So that did put you a bit back, but you were able to sort of, at the end of game 3, have the light screen still in play, which allowed your Salamence later on to survive.
Yes, that's right. That was a good point, because because of that resistance, I was able to Dragon Claw the Fire Giraffe and take the half of his life.
Yes, of HP.
So then I can end with Drain Punch, I think, in the next turn.
Yes, the Drain Punch dealt, like, I think half of Farigiraff's HP, so you're able to recover a bit, play a bit with the Protect, and then sort of try to slow down the momentum from this Torkoal. I mean, it was incredible. We honestly thought at some point Fahad was going to win that game 3 with how it ended up. There was a critical hit in game 2, I think, on your Salamence. You didn't have light screen set up, and it did pick up a KO on the Salamence.
I think that doesn't matter, because later Farigiraf was going to hit with Dalton Green, so I think that crit was not going to affect to the game,
to be impactful.
But that was in game 2, I think. But the thing I think that was the most
critical and important.
Critical, and the flinch in game 2. That's really bad for me.
I mean, but you were able to do incredibly well. You brought it back in game 3, and of course you did clinch that 4th win. So you must be feeling really good about that, right?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, how has the event, other than the beautiful undefeated record, how has the event been going for you so far?
Well, I have been playing in round 1 against Hydreigon Critical. With Focus Energy, Scope Lens, that in a screens team as mine, that's really bad. I didn't know how I won.
Yeah, that's
and the round 2 and round 3, there was 2 matchups I have really good prepared, and they're not easy, because there's a lot of people. There's a good level in the tournament.
Yeah.
But I think that the preparation and the team, that is not mine, it's for my friend Vivito.
Oh, nice.
And is the thing it made me to go for the 4-0 at least.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think it's very important to have a sort of, help and friends sort of feedback as well going into the team. Because understandably, there are some trainers that do sort of team build on their own, but then there are others that also sort of brainstorm and they sort of pass ideas back and forth. So has that been a really critical thing for yourself so far?
Yes, I think also it is really important in the season because of the team sheet. You cannot practice on ladder because there's no team sheet, and so you have with practice with friends, and that's the thing, the point that is going to carry on this season, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And I would say at the moment you're feeling good, you're on form, which is great to see. Do you have any shout-outs that you would like to make at the moment? Any shout-outs, like any sort of thank yous and to anybody they would want to put out or say hi to?
Yeah, obviously my friend Vivito that gave me the team. That he has been practicing with me. We have been practicing the matchups all the week. So I have to thank him. Yeah.
Yep, that is great to see. So we are looking forward to seeing more from you going on to this tournament. So good luck. You've got all of the support from us as well. It has been great to see yourself and the way that you've been able to handle the match. So we're very confident that we would love to see you again. So thank you very much.
I hope so.
Oh, no. Don't worry. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll cut to a very short break, everybody, where we're going to be back with round 5. So don't go anywhere. Get your snacks, and we'll be back shortly.